Good afternoon. As we are all settling down, let's get going because I have an ulterior motive to wrap up this panel in a little over an hour. As much as India's moonshot to net zero over the next 50 years is an important one, and I've been intimately involved in it, the moonshot I've not been involved in at all is the actual moonshot of landing a rover on the moon in just over an hour, and I would rather be watching that than have you listen to me. And I think we all have a common interest in being passive observers for once. But it's not enough to be passive observers. We also have to be active actors, and you have a bunch of active actors on the dais today. This session is particularly important, not just because sustainability is no longer a below the bottom line issue, it's very much an above the bottom line issue. I'm Arunabha Ghosh. I'm the CEO of the Council on Energy, Environment and Water, more easily remembered as CEEW. We could claim to be one of the world's 20 best climate think tanks, and have been intimately involved in many of the major initiatives that India has put forward in its sustainability journey over the last decade. We'll talk a lot more about that, not just the targets India has set, but the actions that are needed, and of course the role of India's diaspora in getting us to our near-term goals as well as to our long-term vision. But let's first hear from Vaishali Nigam Sinha, one of the visionaries in the space from the private sector. Vaishali will deliver her keynote. She will be the keynote speaker, and we will be the keynote listeners. It's important for us. Thank you for putting your hands together. Vaishali is the Chief Sustainability Officer for Renew, but also the founding chair of Renew Foundation. Many of you know her. Those of you who don't should get to know her, because it's not just the business interests, but the broader social dimensions, including the gender-specific dimensions of our energy transition that Vaishali brings so much passion to. So let me stop speaking and turn over to Vaishali and listen to her and her pearls of wisdom. Vaishali, over to you.
Thanks, Arunabha. I can't dare to ask you to listen to me. I love and enjoy listening to you, but thank you for that very kind introduction. And good afternoon everyone. I know it gets a bit lethargic after a great lunch. I think the team here has probably offered, and the weather being the way it is, all you need is a garam pyala of chai and some pakodis. I'm sure you'll get that at some point as well, but yeah, so again, and good afternoon to all the panelists and delegates. And just want to congratulate MR, Sri, Sanjay, the entire team for putting this event together. I know it takes a lot of effort in India, but doing it from outside is even more challenging. And congratulations on building multiple teams around the world. It's sometimes, every time I meet MR, he's got a new office somewhere in the world. And we really need people like that to bring together the community. And when I say that, it's not only Indians, but it's also Indians living in other parts of the world, foreigners who are interested in India. And it's amazing to see what's been done in a short period of time. And I really appreciate the opportunity to speak on this topic, which is Together for Tomorrow, Battling for a Sustainable Future. And very critical and important topic. As Arunabha said, I perhaps am not as involved as Arunabha is as far as the research and other sort of work in this area is concerned, but I just like being in this area and having the impact, and whatever impact one is able to have, I think in any way, in multiple ways, is critical. So to everybody here, even if you're interested in this topic, that's a big deal, because much needs to be done, and I think what needs to be done is changing I think every year, perhaps every few months, if not more frequently. And that's actually the good news. I think I'd like to start by saying this year has been a very historic year for India. I think we are all very proud Indians, especially when you see the way India's occupying this position globally, where we are being recognized not only, I guess, for our intellect, which was the case in the 60s, 70s, 80s, where students went there, but even for our leadership. Our leadership on multiple issues, but particularly so in the area of climate change. And, it's really amazing to see how a leader with a vision can actually have an impact with multiple stakeholders. So, if we had a leader who was not really committed to this area, perhaps there wouldn't have been an opportunity for a company like Renew, which I am a part of, perhaps even for CEW not as much, and many other investors and businesses, etc. So I'm very grateful to our leadership, our Prime Minister, who's really shown the path not only to India and Indians, but globally around the world. So let's take a moment to recognize that. And I think the G20 presidency is a good example of that leadership, which means, I think, a lot, and how we can work together with multiple countries to do more together, to do it at a faster pace, which is the need of the hour right now. To get to our net zero, I don't think this pace is going to be enough, right? To get to 1.5 degrees is already an impossibility. So if you want to change that, I think we need to accelerate our pace. We need to accelerate the partnerships, the capital, the funds, including the better half, if I could say, of the population, which is the women who need to be included, because they are often not included. So those are some of the gaps, and I'm glad to see that we are making progress in these areas. We are all aware of the climate emergency which is staring at us, and is quite imminent. Recently, the UN Secretary General mentioned that the era of global warming has ended, and the era of global boiling has arrived. So the pace, again, as I said, with which we are observing climate change around us is alarming, and it is estimated by 2040 we will reach a point of no return. And if we don't act now, I don't think we will be able to mitigate the impact of climate change. And this all sounds very cliched, but there is a lot of truth to it. And, as I said, anything we can do in any way, the good news is there's an opportunity for everybody. Technology, social impact, fundraising, everything. So today's topic is quite apt, keeping that in mind, that what is it that we can do together for tomorrow. So now let me look at a few examples of collective action which we can take, and which is going to drive the change at a global level. After all, we are a part of a global audience here today. And so let's try and understand what is it that we can do together at a global scale with the global set of stakeholders. So in 2015, the United Nations had committed to a sustainable future by developing a set of common goals and targets in the form of SDGs. I'm sure all of you have heard about the SDGs. Among all the SDGs, the 17th SDG, which is that of partnership for the goals, is perhaps one of the most important ones, and specifically focuses on the need for strong international cooperation to ensure that nations have the resources to achieve all the SDGs. These goals continue to serve as a guide for improvement, where government, civil society, academia, the scientific community, and the private sector must all work together to achieve the collective agenda. So what we are doing here today is, and at least at this session, is quite aligned with what the SDGs also want to achieve. The last few years, which seem like a blur, some of us even have forgotten that we would have been sitting here with masks maybe a year ago, or, the world was so different. We just had, it had become normal for us to be on a call, not to see people. It was awkward to see people. And when the pandemic struck, a lot of wonderful things happened, especially around partnerships. We saw the vaccine, which was made by the Serum Institute, where the research and the production happened here in Pune. Research got done in a different part of the world in UK. And people came together to buy, to distribute, to help each other. I think that was a fantastic example of how we can collaborate across borders for the larger good of humanity. And just because COVID is not there, or we don't have a pandemic or some sort of a crisis, that we shouldn't leverage this invaluable resource, which is really going to accelerate the kind of change we all want to see. Also, as we unlock opportunities arising from climate-centric issues and start addressing the risks, I believe that sustainable future is hinged on 4 important pillars. 1 is global consensus, 2 is better technologies, 3 is strong leadership, and last but not the least is enhanced financing. So let me take all of these perhaps very briefly. The first pillar is global consensus. What we've seen is that sustained commitment from both developed and developing nations to ensure that no one is left behind is critical. We have already seen that 194 countries have ratified the Paris Agreement. And this agreement not only shows consensus globally, but ushers in a shift towards a net zero world. What is now needed is a strong push from governments to not only adhere to their NDCs, but actively strive to surpass these commitments. And honestly, I've been attending the COP for a few years, 2015 onwards, every now and then. And it's really heartening to see the kind of engagement which you see when you're at some of these events. And what happens in between some of these events as well is heartening. So I think the general engagement and collaboration is a lot more, and hopefully that is taking us in the right direction. The next pillar is technology. I mean, technology is super critical. We saw during COVID again how technology brought all of us together. I think we just realized how efficient we all can be with technology and save, on carbon emissions by not traveling, etc. But in a business like ours, let me take a moment and just talk to you about what we do. We are a decarbonization partner for the rest of the world. We help other companies and national governments, state entities, and various other organizations meet their net zero goals by providing renewable energy, by providing other products like nature-based solutions, green hydrogen, etc. We try and work, which is quite ironical, with hard-to-abate sectors to bring them to the other side for use of clean cement, green cement. Perhaps we have Rudra here from whose family is associated with the commitment to green cement, which is amazing. Similarly for steel, etc. So we at Renew also use technology extensively to ensure we can minimize our carbon emissions, to increase efficiencies of generation by decreasing costs associated with it. And for that, we were recently recognized by the World Economic Forum as the first ever lighthouse in this sector for coming up with new innovative technologies for generating clean energy in a more effective and efficient manner. So huge role technology can play. We can't undermine that. Along with the 4th Industrial Revolution, I think there's much coming from that side. Leadership, I highlighted the Prime Minister's leadership, I think leadership of CEOs, leadership of think tanks, and leadership, good leadership, committed leadership, and honest leadership, I think, is going to help us move in the right direction to meet our net zero goals, and we see a lot of it around. Thank God it's not scarce, but it's there in abundance. So it's as we meet various people at forums like this, at various B20 forums, there are enough people who are committed to bring about the change. Last but not the least, I think we all know, we talk about climate funding, we all know about the US $100 billion fund, funding which needs to come to the developing economies. We need more innovation by the multilateral institutions. And I know we're all doing research, we're all doing our bit to mobilize that, to work with these institutions, to think differently. I think Bretton Woods, we all agree, is a little bit dated and needs revision. And if we do all of this, we'll probably have capital coming to the sector, which, and definitely there is absolutely, even as we speak now, from first-hand experience, whether it's debt financing, whether it's equity financing, whether it's any other form of blended finance, there is a huge amount of interest to supply capital for this sector. So that's the good news. And let's appreciate that, because often that's the biggest obstacle for businesses to do what they want to do, and for all of us to be able to succeed in ensuring that we can save this planet for the next generation, which is quite critical. So last but not the least, as I talk about all of these pillars, etc., which is very important, I think I also want to bring to attention the last point. I don't know how much time I have, probably a couple of minutes. I'll wrap up, Arunabha. But a platform like Indiaspora can play a very important role. All of you members, I think, have a huge contribution to make. You're all leaders of companies, financial institutions, civil society organizations. I see Seema here, who's leading and really working so hard to mobilize funds for women-related entrepreneurship and capital in that area. The power is really in your hand to bring ideas here, for us to work together, to collaborate. And I think boundaries and geographies are not an obstacle anymore. So we look forward to engaging and interacting with you. I'm sure all of you have been having productive discussions. I think the most critical part of these forums is to convert discussions into actions, and I look forward to hearing about that, engaging with many of you in whichever way is possible. And I'd like to wish you the very best for the rest of the event. And yeah, all the very best. And thank you once again for giving me this opportunity to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you so much, Vaishali. You really set the context and laying out those issues of ambition, leadership, technology, finance. I know you have to go somewhere, but I can assure you those are the themes that on which we'll have a discussion. And awesome. Next time we meet, I'll give you the answers.
Excellent. Thanks
Thank you so much, Vaishali. Thank you. Round of applause, please, for Vaishali Nigam Sinha.